alone in your own home. That unsettling sensation when you hear a floorboard creak up or when you find something just slightly out of place. Most of us just brush it off. We blame the old pipes, the wind, or our own forgetfulness. But what if it wasn't just your imagination? What if someone else was living in your home, completely hidden, for months or even years? This isn't the plot of a horror movie. This is a true story that happened in Fukuoka, Japan, and it's one of the most chilling accounts of a home invasion I've ever come across. Let's call him Tanaka. Tanaka was a pretty average guy. He worked a regular job, came home, and lived a quiet, solitary life. Started noticing strange little things. Food from his refrigerator would go missing. Not a lot, just a little bit here and there. A half-eaten yogurt, a slice of cheese, a bit of juice from At first, he thought he was just being absent-minded. Maybe he'd eaten it and forgotten. Or maybe he'd misremembered how much was left. It was easy to explain away. We've all been there, right? You could swear you had more milk left in the carton. But the odd occurrences didn't stop. He'd come home to find things moved. A book slightly shifted on the shelf, a remote control on the wrong side of the sofa. These were tiny, almost insignificant changes. So small that he constantly questioned his own sanity. Was he just stressed from work? Was he becoming forgetful? He tried to ignore it, telling himself he was overthinking things. The feeling of unease grew stronger, though constant, low-level anxiety. Sometimes, he'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced he heard a faint sound from another room. A soft shuffling, a quiet rustle. Every time he went to check, there was nothing. The apartment was still, silent, and empty. Or so he thought. He started to feel like he was being watched, a prickly sensation on the back of his neck that he just couldn't shake. Living alone can play tricks on your mind. Every creak of the house, every shadow in the corner of your eye can feel amplified. Tanaka tried to rationalize it all. He told friends about it, He told friends about it, and they laughed it off. You're just lonely, they said. Maybe you should get a pet. He started to believe them. Maybe he was just imagining it all, projecting his loneliness into a phantom presence. The turning point came when money started disappearing from his wallet. Small amounts at first, just a few bills. It was enough to be noticeable, but not enough to be certain. Did he spend it and forget? Did it fall out of his pocket? The doubt was maddening. He was living in a state of constant gaslighting, but the source of it was a complete mystery. He was starting to feel like he was losing his mind. Frustrated and a little scared, Tanaka decided he needed proof. He needed to know if he was going crazy or if something was genuinely wrong. So, he decided to set up a hidden camera in his apartment. He bought a small, discreet webcam and positioned it in his living room, aiming it towards the kitchen and the main living area. He connected it to his work computer so he could live stream the feed and see what was happening in his while he was away. The next day at work, he pulled up the video feed, his heart pounding. He watched for hours. Nothing. The apartment was just as he'd left it, still and empty. He started to feel foolish. Maybe his friends were right. Maybe this was all in his head. He was about to close the window on his computer, ready to give up, when he saw a movement. A shadow flickered across the screen. He leaned closer, his eyes glued to the monitor. And then, he saw her, a woman. A total stranger, emerging from the top closet in his kitchen. His blood ran cold. This wasn't a ghost. This wasn't his imagination. There was a real, living person in his apartment. He watched, paralyzed with shock, as this small, slender woman crept silently out of her hiding place. She moved with a practiced ease, like she'd done this 100 times before. She went straight to his refrigerator, opened it, and helped herself to a drink and some food. She ate quietly, then tidied up after herself, leaving almost no trace. She used his bathroom, then, Just as quietly as she appeared, she climbed back into the small, overhead closet and pulled the door shut behind her. Tanaka was in a state of sheer terror and disbelief. The closet she was hiding in was a Genkan closet, a type of storage space often found near the entrance of Japanese apartments. It was small, cramped, and meant for storing things like shoes or unused items. He never used it, never even thought to look inside. It wasn't designed for a person to live in. Yet, this woman had made it her home. How long had she been there? How did she get in? His mind raised terrifying questions. Every strange noise, every missing item, every feeling of being watched, it all clicked into place. He hadn't been losing his mind. He had an uninvited, unknown housemate. He immediately called the police. When they arrived, he explained the situation, his voice trembling. The officers were skeptical at first, but when he showed them the webcam footage, their expressions changed. They cautiously approached the closet. They called out, ordering whoever was inside to come out. There was no response. Finally, they had to force the closet door open. And there she was. Curled up inside was a 58-year-old woman named Tatsuko Horikawa. She was disheveled but appeared unharmed. In her tiny, cramped living space, she had a sleeping bag and a few bottles of water. She had been living in town of things that seem out of place, and most importantly, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. That little sound you hear at night might not just be the house settling. It could be disturbing. Stay safe out there, and always lock your doors. Have you ever felt a strange connection to an object, like a piece of furniture you just couldn't part with? Maybe it's a family heirloom, or something you found at a thrift store. But what if that connection was something far more sinister? What if the object had a story, a dark secret trapped within its very fibers? This is the story of Clara, and a chair that was more than just a place to sit. Clara was a bright, energetic young woman, just starting her life in a new city. She'd found the perfect little apartment, a cozy space with big windows that flooded the room with sunlight. All she needed was furniture to make it feel like home. One Saturday afternoon, she stumbled upon a dusty antique shop tucked away on a quiet side street. The bell above the door chimed softly as she stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Her eyes scanned the cluttered aisles, filled with everything from tarnished silver to stacks of yellowed books. And then she saw it. In a dim corner, almost hidden beneath a pile of quilts, was a chair. It was an armchair, beautifully crafted from a dark, rich wood, with elegant curves and worn velvet upholstery the color of deep wine. It looked old, ancient even, but there was something about it that called to her, felt familiar. An old woman with skin like wrinkled parchment and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets emerged from the back of the shop. You have a good eye," she rasped, her voice a dry whisper. "That chair has been waiting for a special someone for a very, very long time." Clara ran her hand over the smooth wood. "It's beautiful. How much is it?" The old woman smiled, a strange, knowing smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "My dear, it is a gift. But it comes with a condition." Clara was taken aback. "A condition?" "Yes," the woman continued, her gaze fixed on the chair. "You must never leave it empty for too long. A chair like this, it gets lonely. It needs company. Always." It was a strange request, but Clara was so captivated by the chair that she quickly agreed. She thanked the woman profusely, and with some effort, managed to get the chair back to her apartment. It looked perfect in her living room, a silent, elegant sentinel by the window. That first evening, she curled up in it with a book, the velvet soft against her skin. It was the most comfortable chair she had. It felt like it was made just for her, molding perfectly to her body. Days turned into weeks, and Clara followed the old woman's strange rule. Whenever she was home, she'd sit in the chair. She ate her meals there, watched movies there, even found herself dozing off in its comfortable embrace. Her friends joked about her obsession with her new furniture. "You're going to merge with that thing if you're not careful," her friend Mia teased during a visit. Mia tried to sit in the chair, but as she approached it, she shivered. "How? This thing gives me the creeps," she said, backing away. "Cold." Clara just laughed it off. To her, the chair was always warm, always welcoming. One evening, Clara was running late for a dinner with friends. She was rushing around, getting ready, and in her haste, she completely forgot about the chair. She locked her apartment door and hurried out, leaving the beautiful armchair standing empty and silent in the deepening twilight. The dinner was wonderful, full of laughter and good food. It was past midnight when Clara finally returned home. As she unlocked her door, a strange feeling of dread washed over her. The air in her apartment was heavy and still, and cold. Terribly cold. She flicked on the light switch. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The chair. It was no longer by the window. It was now in the very center of the room, as if it had moved on its own. Clara's heart began to pound in her chest. She told herself it was just her imagination. Maybe she'd moved it earlier and forgotten. She tried to push it back to its spot, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if it were bolted to the floor, and possibly heavy. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept hearing faint noises from the living room, a soft creak of wood, a rustle of fabric. She tried to dismiss it as the old building settling, but a gnawing fear kept her awake. The next morning, the chair was back by the window. Clara felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. On the velvet seat was a small, dark stain, a stain that hadn't been there before. It looked almost like a tear. The strange occurrences continued. The chair would move on its own. Objects near it would be knocked. The faint sounds at night grew louder, sometimes sounding like soft, muffled sobs. Clara was terrified. She started avoiding the chair, leaving it empty for hours, then days at a time. The colder and more menacing her apartment felt, the more she stayed away. One afternoon, desperate for answers, she decided to go back to the antique shop. But when she arrived at the quiet side street, the shop was gone. In its place was a boarded-up, derelict building that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. It was impossible. She had just been there a few weeks ago. Panicked, she asked the owner of the coffee shop next door about it. The man looked at her, confused. "Antique shop? Ma'am, that building has been empty for as long as I can remember. They say it's haunted. Legend has the old woman who used to live there practiced some kind of dark magic. They say she could trap people's souls in objects." A cold dread seized Clara. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. It gets lonely. It needs company. Always. She ran back to her apartment, her mind racing. She had to get rid of the chair. She burst through the door, ready to drag the cursed object out into the street. But she stopped dead in her tracks. The chair was in the center of the room again. And it wasn't. Sitting in the chair was an old woman. Her skin was like wrinkled parchment, and her eyes, holding 1,000 secrets, locked onto Clara's. It was the woman from the shop. "I told you," the woman rasped, her voice filling the small room. "It gets lonely. It was my turn to be free. Now, it's yours." The old woman stood up from the chair, her form flickering and becoming more solid with every second. And as she rose, Clara felt an irresistible force pulling her, dragging her towards the chair. She tried to fight it, to scream, but no sound came out. Her feet moved against her will, one step after another, closer and closer to the wine-red velvet. Her vision began to blur. The last thing she saw was the old woman's face, a cruel smile spreading across. She watched Clara sink into the chair's embrace. There was a blinding flash of light, and then, nothing. Clara was gone. In her place, the beautiful armchair sat silently in the middle of the room. The dark stain on its seat had vanished. The velvet lay. After all, a chair like that gets lonely. And it always needs company. So the next time you see a beautiful piece of furniture in a dusty old shop, a piece that seems to call out to you, that feels like it was made just for you, you might want to walk away, because you never know what soul might, just waiting for its turn to be free. That strange feeling that you're not alone in your own home. That unsettling sensation when you hear a floorboard creak upstairs, or when you find something just slightly out of place. Most of us just brush it off. We blame the old pipes, the wind, or our own forgetfulness. But what if it wasn't just your imagination? What if someone else was living in your home, completely hidden, for months or even years? This isn't the plot of a horror movie. This is a true story that happened in Fukuoka, Japan, and it's one of the most chilling accounts of a home invasion I've ever. It all started with a man living by himself in a small apartment. Let's call him Tanaka. Tanaka was a pretty average guy. He worked a regular job, came home, and lived a quiet, solitary life. For a while, everything was normal. But then, he started noticing strange little things. Food from his refrigerator would go missing. Not a lot, just a little bit here and there. A half-eaten yogurt, a slice of cheese, a bit of juice from a carton. At first, he thought he was just being absent-minded. Maybe he'd eaten it and forgotten. Or maybe he'd misremembered how much was left. It was easy to explain away. We've all been there, right? You could swear you had more milk left in the carton. But the odd occurrences didn't stop. He'd come home to find things moved. A book slightly shifted on the shelf, a remote control on the wrong side of the sofa. These were tiny, almost insignificant changes. So small that he constantly questioned his own sanity. Was he just stressed from work? Was he becoming forgetful? He tried to ignore it, telling himself he was overthinking things. The feeling of unease grew stronger, though. It became